Have you ever felt like you're not quite in the driver's seat of your own life? Like your happiness is all tangled up in your past or in what other people think about you. Well, what if I told you there's a whole philosophy that just throws all of that out the window? Let's dive in and take a look at a totally different way to think about freedom.
And I mean, really think about that for a second. Are you living your life freely, or are you maybe held back by these invisible chains you don't even know are there? So, this radical answer comes from a book called The Courage to be Disliked, and it's all based on the ideas of Alfred Adler. Now, Adler was a pretty fascinating guy, a philosopher and psychiatrist who was actually part of Freud's inner circle before he broke away to create a completely new path for understanding what it means to be human. All right, so first up, we're going to tackle one of the biggest myths that holds so many of us back, this idea that our past is our destiny. But Adlerian psychology, it offers a pretty wild alternative. You know this story, right? It's the classic Freudian idea. Something bad happened to you way back when, and because of that cause, you now have this effect, this anxiety, this fear, this feeling of being stuck. It's a really compelling story, but Adler comes along and asks, is it the only story? And this is where things get really interesting. See, Freud's way of thinking, etiology, is all about looking for the why in the past. But Adler's teleology flips that completely. It looks for the what for, the purpose, or the goal of your behavior, right here, right now. So the question stops being, what caused me to be this way? And it becomes, what am I trying to achieve by being this way? Let's make this real. Imagine someone who dreams of being an author, but they never actually write. They're always too tired or too busy. Now, the old way would be to look at the reasons for being tired. But Adler's approach asks a much sharper question. What's the goal of feeling exhausted? What purpose does that feeling serve? And boom, there it is. By never trying, the author actually protects themselves. The whole purpose of their inaction is to avoid the pain of finding out they might not be a genius. It lets them hold on to that cozy little possibility that I could be great, if only I tried. See? It's a choice, not just a condition. So here's the big takeaway from this first myth. Yeah, past experiences and traumas are real. Nobody's denying that. But they don't have ultimate power over you. You are the one who chooses what meaning to give those events. You get to decide who you are, right here and right now. Okay, so that leads us right into the second myth. If our past doesn't define us, then what is the source of our problems? We usually think our struggles are an internal thing, a battle inside our own minds. But Adler's take on this is, well, it's way more radical. Yep, you read that correctly. All of them. Every single one. That feeling of not being good enough, that anxiety, that nagging self-doubt. Adler's argument is that none of those feelings exist in a vacuum. They only pop up when we're in the context of other people. Think about it. You wouldn't feel short if you were the only person on the planet. You wouldn't feel less than if there was no one to be more than. These feelings of inferiority, they're not objective facts about you. They're just subjective ideas that are born from comparing yourself to everyone else. And this just hits so hard, doesn't it? The real sting of failure isn't just about missing a target. It's about the judgment. It's about what we think other people will say. We're afraid of being seen as a failure. It's a social fear, through and through. So even if we fix our relationship with our past, we're still caught up in this web of other people. And that social web leads us straight to our third and final myth. And honestly, this is the big one. It's about that deep, almost primal need we have for recognition and approval from others. Living your life just to get a pat on the back from other people, well, it's like letting them control your happiness remote. Your sense of worth gets tied to things you have zero control over. Other people's moods, their opinions, their expectations. And for Adler, that is the absolute definition of being unfree. So how do we break free from that? Well, Adler gives us this really simple, super practical tool called separating tasks. All you do is for any given problem, you ask one question. Who ultimately has to deal with the consequences of this choice? Let's take a kid's homework. A parent might stress about it, but at the end of the day, it's the child's task because they're the ones who get the grade. The parent's task isn't to control, it's to support. And that brings us to the book's most famous, most provocative quote. Think about it. If you are truly living your life by your own rules and you're separating your tasks from other people's, it's basically guaranteed that some people aren't going to like your choices. And Adler says that's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's proof that you're finally living your own life. Okay, so if being disliked is actually a sign of freedom, then how are we supposed to live? Adler doesn't just tear down all these old myths. He actually gives us a whole new framework for building a free and happy life.
A massive part of this is shifting from what he calls vertical relationships to horizontal ones. Vertical relationships are all about hierarchy, seeing people as above you or below you. It's all about praise and judgment, which just leads to competition. But horizontal relationships, they're based on equality. You see others as different but equal, as partners, not rivals, and you offer encouragement, not judgment.
So, what's the point of all this? What's the goal in this new way of living? What even is happiness according to Adler? The answer is almost shockingly simple. Happiness is the feeling of contribution.
And the real power here is that this feeling doesn't depend on anyone else. It's not about getting praised or recognized. It flips your focus from what can I get from people to what can I give. As long as you, in your own heart, feel like I am useful to someone, you can be happy. Your very existence becomes a contribution. So when you put it all together, letting go of the past, seeing problems as being about people, separating your tasks from theirs, and finding happiness in contribution, it all really boils down to just one thing.
Adler's philosophy is, frankly, pretty blunt. If you're unhappy, it's not because of what your parents did, it's not because of some past trauma, and it's not because you weren't born with some special talent. It all comes down to a lack of courage, the courage to be disliked, the courage to take full responsibility for your own life. You might say it's simply a lack of the courage to be happy. So I'll leave you with this question. If you genuinely weren't afraid of what other people might think, if you weren't afraid of being disliked, what one thing would you do differently, starting today?